In-house energy competence is what we're going to discuss. We'll look into the requirements of energy management system training, then how to assess training needs, address these training needs, developing tailored trainings, and discuss some organizational issues related to trainings and competence development. So ISO 50001 refers in 7.2 section competence, requires to determine what are the necessary competences of persons doing work under the control of the organization that affect the energy performance and energy management system of the company. Then companies must ensure that these persons are competent on basis of appropriate education, training, skills, or experience, and where applicable, take actions to acquire the necessary competence. For example, hiring somebody from outside, conducting training of people, sending them out for education, for example. And at the end, very important is to evaluate the effectiveness of the actions that are taken. In 7.3, ISO 50001 talks about awareness, where the persons must be aware of what is an energy policy, what energy policy have we devised, how are these persons or how are individuals contributing towards the effectiveness of energy management system, including the achievement of objectives, targets, action plans, and what are the benefits of the energy performance improvement. Then the impact of their activities and behaviors on energy management. So if they are changing the process parameters, for example, what impact it could have if they are careless regarding switching off supplies of the machines during the shutdown, or switching off electric or power of the lights, for example. So what kind of impact it could have, for example, on energy management system, and implications of not conforming with energy management system requirements. What kind of organizational or departmental or personal implications can they have of not complying with the energy management system requirements? Then we have HIG FEM. This is not in energy section, but it is in the environmental management section. Level 2, it asks, do employees at your facility responsible for environmental management have the technical competence required to do their job? What means knowledge, skill, and attitude. And then level 3, it asks, does your facility promote awareness of the environmental strategy to the employees? These are the requirements as per this. So there are different approaches. We could be conducting a formal training where general induction training is required, or refresher training is required, or training on some special skill is required, or reinforcement training, for example, workplace supervision debriefings or everyday briefings, for example, work instructions, reminding people about the work instructions or signs that are posted there. So depending on the approaches, we might need to change the way how do we conduct. So for a reinforcement training, we might not need to make a big presentation or stuff like that, but all we would need is the SOPs on which we want people to train, take them to the work floor, ask them what this sign represents, what this SOP means, how do you implement it. For formal trainings where you need special skill trainings, you might need to do it in a classroom first and then take them to the work floor, for example. So depending on what kind of training approach we're using, we need to make changes towards our approach. Subject areas for consideration in energy could be operational controls related to energy performance, significant energy uses and their operational controls, identification and reporting of NPOs at workplace, good housekeeping practices and their impact on energy performance, for example, leakage elimination or closing the taps, for example, or hazards associated with fuels, pressure vessels, and other combustibles at workplace, also related to energy somehow. Then hazards associated with and possibility of exposure to electrical installations or hot surfaces at workplace, preventive environmental and work safety practices. So for example, workers who are working in cold storage area must wear certain kind of mask which keeps them safe from PM 2.5 or PM 10 kind of particulate matters, for example, or good resource efficiency practices, emergency prevention and response. So there could be a list of topics, or generally on an energy management system. There could be many topics that can be considered. But basic question to ask is, number one, why is the training required? What do we need to achieve? For example, what level of intellect do we need to pitch in? Are we going to train workers? Are we going to train specialists, for example? What kind of audio visual aid do we need? How much time do we have available for this kind of a training? What should be participants able to do or think at the end of the training? Who are our target groups? Where do they come from? What are their expectations? Do they already have some prior experiences? Can they speak a certain language that we speak, or do we need interpretation, for example? And then what is a good time for training? How much time do we have? Where do we conduct it? Do we conduct it online? Do we conduct it on site? If we're doing it online, so how would we evaluate the training or follow up on the training results, for example? These are some organizational issues as well that we need to look at. Possible targets in the factories could be the management people or the supervisors, workers, or specialists, for example, a boiler operator, or the suppliers who are coming to the factory. Why the suppliers? For example, suppliers need to know if we are supplying fuel to this company, or if we are supplying equipment to this company. So this company is vigilant about energy efficiency, so we should pitch to them products which are energy efficient products. Contractors who are coming into the factory, who are working in the factory, must also know that this factory is working on energy management system, and then all our activities also impact on the energy performance of the factory. So we need to have a compliant behavior. And ask yourself, what are the required knowledge and skills? So knowledge, skills, and attitude that a person requires to do a job that they're doing, and their current knowledge or skill gaps. If this is a photographer, for example, who needs to have knowledge of the camera that he's using or she's using, do they know about this camera, or have they been using an older camera? So how much time would it take for them to get to know about this camera? Do they need a training, or do they just need a manual to read from which they can get the required results? So depending on that, we can decide on the content. Then distinguishing between teaching students and industry people. So if we have, for example, those workers who have recently graduated from universities or colleges, or they're fresh workers with no prior experience, you can treat them as students, and that would mean that they have less experience or no working experience, and then they have a lot of time to study if company can allow them to study more time before they are put into jobs, for example. And they don't have any practice, so they cannot reflect on their prior practices in the industry. And their preference would be comprehensive theoretical knowledge first, and then leading into practical knowledge once they have the theoretical knowledge. On the other hand, people who already have experience coming from industry have a lot of working experience already, so they don't need basics, and they have short time slots for learning. They cannot spend 10 days, 20 days, 30 days in the training, but they need very, very short sessions. And they cannot come very frequently, for example, as well. And then reflection of the learning content with the work study environment is very important. So if you teach something, tell them a concept, it is important that you reflect with them how they have been doing it, or how they can apply it in their work. And their preference is experiential learning. So they want to learn by doing the experience rather than only by getting the theoretical content. How can we do that? So remember these two notions. One is the adult learning principles, and second is experiential learning. I'm going to talk about these going forward. So the key adult learning principles are that the experts from industry, or the adults actually, want to demonstrate their own willingness to learn. And if an adult is not willing to learn, you cannot compel them to learn. So if they are, for example, preoccupied, they're busy somewhere else. You cannot actually put them into a learning place by force and start teaching them. Even if they sit there by force, they won't actually learn because their mind would be distracted. And then their preference is self-directed learning rather than putting them into content. Give them ideas and then let them share ideas. So they want to bring their own experiences across, and they also want to contribute, and their aim is to solve the problems. So there are two words. Andragogy means adult learning, and pedagogy means learning for kids or children. As a learner, the adults are self-directed, but the kids or children are actually dependent on the teacher. Kids don't have experience, adults have a lot of experience. The readiness to learn, the kids have to be told that you need to learn, but the adults need to learn for the job. So even if they are not willing to sit in a classroom, they still have a need to learn. And if they're not sitting in a classroom, they might be learning it from discussions, from online searches, for example, or reading material, for example. And the orientation is that their learning must be organized around their work life, around their jobs, routine tasks that they focus on, and they get motivated internally only. If you cannot externally motivate them, for kids in the beginning you have to externally motivate them. You have to keep them motivated by encouraging them, by telling them they're doing very good job, so they need to learn more. You know how we deal with kids, clapping for them because they have learned something very good. But with adults, these kind of things are limited. And the role of teacher for adults is a facilitator or an enabler, not a typical teacher who designs the learning process. In this case, as you said earlier as well, no TNA brings you disasters. So for andragogy, for adult learning, it is important to conduct a need assessment first, and then enable that need by designing the training around that training need assessment. Adults learn by doing, so there are 6 principles. Adults learn by doing. So as a trainer, act as a facilitator, not as a technical expert. Remember that grid of the roles. Be on the extreme left-hand side in this case with adults. And the ultimate learning experience comes from getting people to do some job, do some tasks. So you did something at least with your hand, develop some eco maps, develop some process flow charts, some action planning, for example, but at least in the experimental level. Number 2 is to use realistic examples, the real cases. If you use fictitious cases, wrong examples, wrong data, people won't actually learn anything, and they won't be able to relate to it as well. Then using the variety, so using different tones. Sometimes if I start speaking in a flat tone, just saying use tone and pace during the course of training, just without any facial expressions, without any ups and downs in my voice, I will not be able to emphasize on the right words that I want to emphasize upon. So use different paces. Sometimes we need to fasten up. For example, some of the slides could be left on the participants to read on their own. That is true. And some of the slides, even though they have less text, but sometimes we spend 10 minutes or 15 minutes only on one slide to ensure that the message is sent across. If we don't do that, the message does not go across. So being flexible on this is very, very important. And then different delivery modes. If we are doing a physical training, we can also do some social exercises. Some fun activities can also be done. Unfortunately, doing these fun activities online brings some disasters as well sometimes. So that is where we try to avoid these online. So there's a little bit of difference between doing online and face-to-face trainings. So conduct training in informal environments. So rather than being very, very formal, or for example, I know a trainer who conducts a training of trainers, and when people arrive late in the training, he penalizes them. He asks them to, for example, stand in the corner for 5 minutes or do some push-ups. And with this, he thinks that he's trying to teach them to come in time. In my opinion, this is the wrong way of dealing with anybody, even an adult or even a kid. If you want to teach them the lesson of time management or coming in time, then as a trainer, start in time. Whoever comes early gets gets to know more than those who come late. I think getting less time of training is already a penalty for those who come late. So rather than doing these kind of formal things, try to be a less formal, try to build up a friendly environment, do some group works, experience sharing sessions, so that people learn more, and then inform learners of learning objectives. Tell them in the beginning that these are the learning objectives that we have developed based on the training need assessment. What do we want to achieve at the end of this training? And then guide and prompt. Don't tell, don't prescribe, don't say that this is the tool that you must use. And even the formats that I'm sharing are developed for the training purpose, so that in the training it helps you. But when you are using it in these practically, feel free to make changes to these formats. Ask participants to think through the lesson and discover on their own the answers, rather than I tell you that these are the NPOs in the textile company. I rather let you to identify the NPOs, let you to come up with root causes, and then I gave you some hints how you can improve your NPO identification or root cause analysis, for example. So assessing the training needs, then, so general purpose training, general purpose of the assessment is to develop or change attitude. So what is the purpose of the training? Do we want to develop or change attitudes of the people? Do we want to enhance their knowledge, or do we want to develop a specific skill set in them? So these are three different types of training purposes that we do. So how can we do these? These could be general orientation training. This could be refresher training. This could be into the job training, like an induction training. So when we hire people, we train them on some basics, for example, before sending them into the factory for work. Or it could be an on-the-job training. So imagine if we are training an energy auditor on measurements. So in the classroom, you could show them how this equipment works, what are the parameters, show them different screens, what does each button do, and then take them to the workplace, ask them to do the measurement by themselves. And then they would do the measurement. You will see if they have connected it properly, if they have started it properly, if they have taken the printout of or if they've saved it properly, and then have they cleaned the equipment and wrapped it properly again or not. So all this is part of the knowledge, skill, and attitude as well. In the factories, when developing the trainings for them, it is important to develop a training matrix. This is only one example of training matrix, where on the left hand side in first column, we have different people or different groups who need to get trained. As example, starting with CEOs, workers, induction trainers for induction people, supervisors, production managers. And on the top, there are training topics. The CEOs or directors need to know less about technical content, but more about monitoring, performance evaluation, internal auditing. Whereas utility managers or production managers or the EHS officers need to know more about the technical content. Admin people need to more about how the awareness is being raised, or how the auditing will be done, for example. So based on this, we can then design our training calendar so that not everybody has to participate in every training. We have a saying that one medicine does not solve all the diseases. So similarly, one topic is not required for everybody. Also, you can even improve this matrix by also writing what level of information do they need. For example, CEO, director, or GM do not need to know what are the formulas of performance monitoring, how to operate the equipment, but they need to know the results. Whereas the utility managers also need to know how to operate the monitoring equipment. So here already in the cells, we could write the details what are needed for each of the segment. And then based on the training needs, define the learning outcomes. And remember this phrase, at the end of this training, the participants will be able to. This is the most important phrase when you are designing a training. After DNA, ask yourself, what should the participants be able to do or know or say or feel after attending the training? So example, at the end of the training, the participants will be able to explain the meaning of awareness posters and work instructions related to energy performance, explain the effects of operating parameters of their process on energy performance, correctly operate the machine according to devised controls and work instructions related to energy performance, record energy data in the log sheet of the process, safely shut down the machine and their energy supplies. Do you notice one common thing? All of these start with an action verb. Explain, correctly operate, record, safely shut down. So this means that these are also the evaluation criteria for us. So if we develop a learning outcome, at the end, the company would like their employees to be able to do these things. So at the end, you can ask people if they are able to explain the meaning of these posters. Show them a poster and ask them if what is the meaning of this. If they are able to explain it, this means that first objective is achieved. Then ask them which parameters are they working with in the machine, and which of these parameters you change them would increase or decrease the energy performance. They should be able to tell at the end of the training, and they should also be able to operate machine according to the work instructions. So how do you do that? You go match their work with the work instructions, do an observation. For this, you don't have to ask them. For this, you have to observe their performance, and then you will see. Similarly, look at the log sheet, do a sample audit of the log sheet, if the data is recorded correctly or not, and then you would know. Then shut down, observe a shutdown process and see, randomly see, rather than telling the worker, just randomly see if they shut down all the energy supplies or not. So this is how the learning outcomes or objectives can be developed, always starting with a clear action verb. Then, I mean, there could be different modes of delivery. There could be lectures, demonstrations, presentations, exercises, case studies, role plays. There could be a drill, for example, fire drill. You could show a film or a video to people as well. With video, I had one bad experience. Actually, two bad experiences. I downloaded a video which was very, very relevant to the lecture that I was doing, and it was working very well on my computer. And because I was the only one sitting in the room, the audio quality was also very good. But when I opened that video, started it in the lecture hall, the voice was so low, nobody was able to listen to it. And this gave me a lesson that next time in a physical training, if we are using videos, we must have the external speakers as well. Another time, I used a video and I did not ask participants if they can understand English very well in the video. So this speaker in the video was speaking a bit fast, and the accent was also a little bit difficult. It was a British accent, and not everybody understood the British accent in Pakistan. So when I ran that video, at the end of 2 minutes of video, nobody knew what had happened. So, and third time I had a video disaster was that video was so long that people started feeling sleepy. So with the videos, it's a bit tricky to have the right video in the right language, with the right length, and with the right audio quality, with the right visual quality as well. So not everybody likes to watch a video. And for example, my father, he says that whenever he watches an English movie, he never understands what they're saying. Although he speaks English, if anybody speaks English with them live, he's very good in English. But in movies, you know, they speak fast. So that is the same problem with videos. They speak fast sometimes. They have a certain accent, and you cannot ask them to repeat. So it just passes by. And sometimes it takes practice to be able to understand a video which is in a foreign language rather than in your own language. So try to find something that is in your own language, or insert closed captions or translation in the footnotes. Third way is to stop the video after every one or two scenes, wherever the one message completes. Convey this message verbally, then start the video, then stop it, convey the rest of the message, or at the end of the video, summarize what was the message in the video. Best is if you use a video which does not have any audio but is only a demonstration video. Have you come across a website called Napo? Napo. This website actually has a lot of videos, cartoon videos related to workplace health and safety. Many related to chemicals management, but also many related to electrical safety or fire safety. So if you are conducting general safety trainings as well, or resource efficiency trainings, this is a very good resource to be used. Just type on Google Napo videos on workplace safety, and you will go to this website. And these videos, these are cartoon characters, just like, for example, Mr. Bean. Similarly, this Napo videos also use only body language. So you can use it anywhere, even with kids. But these things are usually easily available for health and safety things. But these kind of things are not available for energy efficiency. But sometimes when we are training workers, even on energy efficiency, we have to include things related to electrical shock or hot surfaces. For that, you can get some videos from Napo.